We're going to talk about numbers today. Case study time. What was it specific about this deal that makes it ideal?
He would have been able to have a bigger seller carry portion and come zero out of pocket if her number was different. He was walking into like a pretty sweet deal. Like he's like, I'm going to cash flow at least $1,000 a month. So 75% LTV.
Can we talk about the fun stuff? Like how much it appraised at?
The fun part about this transaction is that all the funds went right to the seller. Escrow didn't hold them back.
So, a quick recap. We had a $550 purchase price. Seller carryback amount was $1.
We're live! Happy day!
Happy day, everyone. We are back with one more sequence in the Morby Method Series, and we're going to talk about numbers today. Case study time.
We are finally. Everyone's like, case study, case study, case study. We got it. We got it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Awesome.
This one, to me, is an ideal situation for a Morby, just from the TZ side, because it's pretty, to me, cut and dry. And this situation, so this was in Alaska, and the buyer and seller actually had already done deals together. And so they had already built that trust. And everyone has heard me harp on trust and transparency the whole time. So they already had that. So this Morby took months, which everyone's going to go, oh, crap. But one, it's Alaska. And then two, it was a smaller multifamily. I think it was a fourplex. And it just took a while, right? So buyer had stuff happening, seller. But they knew each other and they trust each other. So there wasn't a huge rush. They knew that they were going to close this deal. How they were going to close it, that's obviously where we came in. We did multiple consults with the buyer on what needed to happen, what to ask the lender, if they allow the second position right away at closing, or if we needed to do it a different way, which we had to do it a different way. So the purchase price was $500.
So can I stop you for a quick second? Sorry. You said this was the perfect cut and dry. Is that the transparency is the only reason for this being the ideal deal? What was it specific about this deal that makes it ideal?
I think that's probably like the biggest portion of it is because they had already worked together. So they already had that trust. And so when something got pushed back on the buyer side and he had to go to the seller was like, okay, I trust you, right? Versus doing the first deal together, which you have to do one deal to get multiple deals, right? So, but for me, I was like, okay, this is awesome because since it did take months, it was going back and forth. And so, buyer was in the military too. And so you had that factor of like, okay, sometimes buyer wasn't communicating. We were only communicating with the seller, but the seller trusted because they had already worked together. So of course you're going to have that first deal, but like this one, I was like, okay, I love this because they already know each other. I mean, they go by first name and it wasn't awkward. And like, you're getting on calls together and it's like they're friends. And so for me, that time, it just made the conversations easier, right?
What was the seller situation? Was it the investor that was retiring, or what did that look like?
She just wanted to get out of it. She just needed the money. So nothing like super crazy, right? I can't remember if she wanted to invest in other things or she just was trying to pay stuff down. I don't totally remember that. I just know that she had her number and she wanted her number, right? So that part, I'm kind of lame on that. I don't totally remember that.
That's all good.
But he would have, so when we get into the numbers, he would have been able to have a bigger seller carry portion and come zero out of pocket if her number was different because she could have carried more. And then, so again, when we kind of dive into the numbers a little bit more, because it was a performing asset and so it was cash flowing. And so it's not like it was a bad deal and he was going to make it better, right? Like he was walking into like a pretty sweet deal. Like he's like, I'm going to cash flow, at least $1,000 a month. And so for him, he's like, I want to make this happen. She needs the money. Let's just make this happen however we need to make it happen. So
was there any rehab needed or rehab planned onto it?
No rehab. It was fully rented. I mean, obviously, when the tenants move out, of course, you can do some rehab and like freshen it, but nothing like it wasn't a fix and flip situation where they needed to go in and put money in before it's
Hmm.
rented. I mean, it was just it. I mean, it was like, oh shoot, like I need to find a seller like this, right? Like I want that investment. So,
Yes.
no rehab needed. Yeah. Okay. Numbers.
Numbers, yes. So we start with the purchase price and basic investor
Yeah.
look tag.
So purchase price was 550,000. The seller carryback amount was 125,000. The loan was 412,500, the DSCR loan. Transactional funds was 155.93 and 17 cents. He paid
Huh.
out of pocket 30,093 and 17 cents.
That's 75%.
Okay. So 75% LTV.
Can you talk about the fun stuff, like how much it appraised at? So I was going for 412 plus 155, that is 567.
Well, because if you do the math, even just that he paid the 30,000 out of pocket,
Mm-hmm.
the 125 plus the 30 is the transactional funds of 155. So the fun part about this story or this transaction is that all the funds went right to the seller. So escrow didn't hold them back. So this is where the trust came in. Is all the funds went to the seller and then seller wired them back to the buyer outside of escrow. Yeah. So that's where I'm like, that part is not my favorite part because I'm a firm believer, right? As a TC, all funds go through escrow, but
Yeah.
that is the part where the trust and the doing the multiple things of going, here's $155,000. You're going to wire me back the money that you. And so, but it happened and it was us TCs because we were sitting on pins and needles like, okay, we were checking in with the buyer. Did you get the wire? Did you get the wire? Did you get the wire? Because like, you're like, I really hope that money is
Yeah.
not going to make people weird, right?
Yes. Oh my God.
Good case study here.
Okay. So a quick recap. We had a 550 purchase price. Seller carryback amount was 125. The DSCR lender is bringing in 412. The down payment that transaction funder is bringing in is 155,
Mm-hmm.
093 change. And the buyer came out of pocket 30,000. Now, do you remember if the buyer was planning on coming out of pocket with that amount, or they
He
came in? Yeah.
was. So at the beginning, right, because this again was over months. And so at the first couple consults, we did multiple consults with him, multiple Zooms with him, right? First, he's like, I'd like to not come out with money, but I have money if I need to. And so then it came down to what the seller needed and making it win win. So he was fully prepared to come out of pocket with money. He just would have preferred not to. But again, right, relationship wise, going, hey, I'm going to come out of pocket $30,000. I'm getting a cash flowing, fourplex, and it's all, he's made that money back already, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, he would have preferred, but like luckily, and that was one of the like the questions that we came up with, like right away. We're like, are you prepared to come out of pocket with money? And he was. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens, but at least you're prepared versus, a lot of times I see investors wanting, of course we all want to get into deals with no money out of pocket. That's like the dream, right? But the reality is, and I'm a firm believer, like you're an investor. Like you have got to be ready to put skin in the game. Because that's just how it works.
Yeah,
What if
yeah.
the air conditioning unit goes out or the hot water heater? Then what, right? Like you have to be prepared. You are running a business. You are in the big leagues now, right? Like you got renters in there. Like you pay to play, baby. Like,
Yeah. And that's another thing. It's because it's a strategy that allows you to come in with zero out of pocket. doesn't mean that you don't need anything in the
Mhm.
backup. uh,
Totally.
Whenever we talk about in the short frame videos, when they talk about this, it's entry is always obviously zero money down, but there is always a conversation of war chest that is happening in the background that's not always part of the educational videos. That's something that needs to be.
Is it always the easiest or best thing to come out with no money out of pocket? Because for me, right, I'm on the transaction coordinator side. Don't overcomplicate it. Like if at like $30,000 right now, granted, if we're talking bigger purchase price, 150, down payment, you have to come out of pocket at 150. Yeah, let's get creative. But like if you can't come out of pocket with $30,000 and you're going to overcomplicate it, you know, then even for the cash purchase, right, you've got transactional lenders coming in and lender requirements, which I'm so excited we're going to get to talk to a lender soon, but it's like, don't, don't like muddy the water if you don't need to. That's for me. But yeah, I mean, you got to be prepared to have that war chest. Is there a war chest in that seller carry? Like what are you doing with the funds? Do you have a plan? What if you get abducted by aliens? You always need a plan, like all of the things. And so, but just don't overcomplicate it and muddy it.
Yeah. And this again, I think, comes back to the idea that uh, because because you are able to get into the deal zero money down doesn't mean that you don't look for a good deal, doesn't mean you overpay and over leverage the property and risk the seller.
Totally. Because the
Yeah.
big thing that I've seen lately is they are coming in or they're trying to come in, and this is where a lot of the Morbies that I've seen lately have not worked out, is because they are just so over leveraging because they are stubborn and they don't want to come out with money, or money out of pocket. Or it's not as great of a deal, but they want a deal, right? And they're like, "Ooh, I can Morby method this," and you're like, "Okay, but is it still a good deal if you Morby method it? Because if it's not, you probably shouldn't. Like, it's just not a deal."
Yeah. And
So
what that does is, if it's not a good deal, it limits your backup options and backup exits as well. Like you
totally,
will not, if it doesn't work out, you'll not be able to sell it out and make any money out of that. It's You'll
totally.
have to stick with it for the long term.
And that's when people get in trouble, is they like just so focused and they're so narrow that I have to get a deal, I have to get a deal, I have to get a deal. And you're like, okay, you're cash flowing $100. Like, and also what's your exit? You're like, that's not a good deal, you know? Because if something happens, and it doesn't even have to be with that house, right? If something happens with your homestead or another investment, like where are you going to have capital and what's your exit if for some reason you have to offload, right? So
Yeah.
always have a plan.
Yes. Back to the numbers.
Hmm.
Whenever I, as a transactional lender, underwrite a Mori method, if I am funding the deal, I need to see that seller carryback amount is at least equal to the amount that I'm funding plus my fees.
Hmm. And a
So
lot of people
if
miss your guys' fees.
Yeah. So, and it will stop at that our gate basically when we ask those questions. What do the numbers look like? So in this case, your down payment is 155. That's coming from the transaction lender, but seller carryback amount is only 125. So what was the conversation that you guys had with the transactional lender, and what was the security for them?
Well, so the thing too was he was coming out of pocket the 30,000. So then that made the 155. So the 125 and the 30,000. So that was just a conversation of, hey, I'm coming out of pocket to make this 155. Because obviously the
Okay.
155, that breakdown that I'm giving included his fee, right? So
Yeah.
that was the conversation of like, hey, and again, right, where you're coming out of pocket, you can have that conversation, be like, I actually have money to be able to bring to this deal to pay you back.
Okay. And sequence wise, if I'm funding this specific deal, I would want to see that. the buyer funds the escrow first before I send in my money.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a conversation that you had? Is that part of the lender instructions? How do you guys make that work?
So this is going to be a controversial answer. I know that some TCs do things differently, right? So obviously, just find your TC that works and vibes for you. But so that would be a conversation that I would not have with the transactional lender. That would be a negotiating thing between the buyer and the transactional lender. And I'm just going to follow the instructions. So I would say, hey, and in this situation too, again, this was a little while ago, so I don't totally remember all of those fine details, but hey, you guys need to decide if transactional lender wants those funds in escrow first, that we can make that happen, right? He's coming in with money, but you guys just need to let us know how we're going to facilitate this. And so, transactional lender, what are your requirements? Okay, buyer, are you good with that? This is a negotiating piece where we kind of take a step back and go, okay, we're here. We can answer any questions. We can tell you what's happened in other deals, but you guys are ultimately going to decide because this is so buyers need to be thinking about, okay, cool. And I, not on a Morby method, but dealing with this in different TC deals actually recently, right? If I'm coming in as a third party to represent the buyer or maybe the transactional lender, in this case, we were with the buyer, right? That relationship with the buyer is with the transactional lender, not the TC and the transactional lender, right? And so I think it's important too for people to realize and just remember, right? We are totally, as TCs, we're here to help. We are here to like help facilitate. If we need to all get on a Zoom together, we can do that. But ultimately, and that's not my relationship to curate, right? Now, if I'm curating that relationship, then that changes my role as more of a connector and not necessarily a TC or a TC connector because that's my relationship with the transactional lender going, hey, I have someone that needs transactional funds. And then we have the relationship, not really this buyer over here. And so it's very important for those parties because if he wants to do another Morby method, he wants to do another deal and he needs transactional funds, he should go straight to his transactional lender because they have the relationship. So in this case, what we did was like, hey, you just need to decide what is happening. You guys need to have the conversation and what the transactional lender is requiring in this relationship, and then we're going to help make that happen. But yeah, like if your policy, right, and working with you because it's your business, so you get to decide whatever your policy is hey, I want to make sure that whatever funds are going to be in escrow to like proof of funds, or if you want to see a proof of funds, I mean, we're going to go, okay, cool. That's what he's requiring to make this a win-win and to work for all parties. So that needs to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can rephrase that question in another way. Let's say if I were to consult you on, hey, this is how do I ensure protection in this? So is there a paperwork that can say that in case the buyer doesn't come with the funds, we are willing to fund, but if the buyer doesn't come up with the funds,
Yeah.
we still come back.
So a lot of that, and I am also a firm believer in personal guarantees or cross collateralization if needed. In this case, obviously, cross collateralization wasn't really needed, but personal guarantee. So, on the lender side, right, switching from representing the buyer to the lender, as if I represent the lender, the transactional lender, I'm going to say you need a personal guarantee, you need cross collateralization, you need all of the things, you need a JV agreement, you need this, we're going to go through and basically have you overly paperworked is what I'm going to call it, and have every single possibly thing so that if for some reason he doesn't bring funds, and I'm also not going to say, why are your funds? Right? Because if you want to see those funds, until we have confirmation from escrow, I'm not going to say, why are those funds? Because that's me protecting you, right? So, and that's where it comes into every party should have their own TC, and I'm a firm believer in that no matter what. If you're a lender, transactional lender, private money partner, PML, buyer, seller, everyone should have their own TC because we work for the buyer in this particular Morby, right? But then you want your own protection going, okay, I've got my JV agreement, I got my personal guarantee, I've got my cross collateralization. Okay, hey, escrow, do you have the funds yet? Because I'm not wiring until those funds are there. I need that confirmation. And this TC over here is representing the buyer. So yes, they know what needs to be done, but ultimately they work for the buyer. So Are they really going to overly protect you and make sure that those funds are in there? I mean, you'd hope that they're going to do the right thing, but ultimately they work for the buyer, not making sure that your list of requirements is done too. And so that's like so many times TCs just get thrown into every party and then like nobody has full representation. And coming from my real estate background, dual agency or, it's not impossible, but it's frowned upon because then there's no true representation. And so for me, I think the same way for investor or investors and having a TC, every party needs their own TC so that there's full representation because then this buyer TC can work with your TC and go, hey, we don't have funds yet from the transactional lender. And this TC can go, hey, your guys' funds aren't in escrow yet. And per the JV agreement and blah, 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 we're not sending funds until this has happened. Please have your buyer send funds. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't, as I'm talking with my hands, but like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Right. And so then the TCs can work together to make sure everyone's needs are met.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense.
That's my
Uh,
soapbox on that.
what's next? We can talk about the underwriting piece of this. So, well, did you have anything to add? Because I cut you off in between after you gave me the summary of numbers.
No, I think that's so this was a very clean deal. It just took a lot of time to get everyone they knew each other but on the same page and then with timelines with military and just life happening. So this one was a long one, but it was a very relatively clean one. I think a lot of numbers that usually get missed, and this is my broken record, is it's trying to be done too fast. And so the speed of it, right? Because people are going, oh my gosh, I have a deal, or I think I have a deal. Okay, cool. I have a transactional lender and he's going to come in with 50, just going to use easy numbers here, $50,000. And okay, cool. I have this much. But then it's almost like the reverse of analysis paralysis. And this is not going to make any sense, but I'm trying to like talk it out a little bit. But like they're moving so fast that they're not thinking clearly because they only have one deal in their pipeline. Versus if you had more deals in your pipeline, you were analyzing more deals, you'd go, okay, cool. I don't need to rush this because I know that I have more in my pipeline, right? More deals. And so I think what happens a lot of times is investors don't fill their pipeline enough. And so they're focused on one deal and then they're speeding through it because they got to get the deal. They got to get it under contract. Oh my gosh, recently a lot of the Morbies that I've seen, it's too rushed. And like I've said from the beginning, don't rush a Morby. That's my opinion. I know other TCs will work faster. But I'm a firm believer of like, just don't rush it, right? Because then, you know, all of a sudden your transactional lender needs to bring in more because you have all of these fees that you didn't, remember. You didn't remember the title fees. You didn't remember your TC fee. You didn't even remember your own transactional lender fee. Like, come on, it takes money to buy, it's going to cost money to borrow that money, right? And so I think what it comes down to is speed, and that's why things get missed. Again, depending on the deal, of course, Morbies, I'm a firm believer, like, don't rush it. Really, any deal, don't rush it. But the more you rush it, usually more stuff is missed. And so it's like if you can just pause and slow down and like really analyze it and go, okay, this is the number. Okay, this is what it's going to cost. As a borrower, my first, priority should be building the relationship with my transactional lender and knowing, okay, if I borrow this much, how much is it going to cost? If I borrow this much, how much is it going to cost? Okay, and getting to know what their requirements are. Because if I'm going in and I'm going to borrow $100,000, right? But my conversations have only been around borrowing $50,000, and your fee is different for borrowing 100 versus 50. My underwriting is automatically going to be wrong because I was the idiot that didn't ask enough questions. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Their fee for easy numbers is going to be $10,000. And no, maybe it's $30,000. So then you're automatically off on underwriting by $20,000. Talk to your
What's your
TC,
transaction
talk to your
lender?
lenders, and build those relationships because then right?
Yeah.
I mean, not on a Morby, but I recently had a conversation with a client that all of a sudden was like, "Hey, what are you doing for your fee?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! together numerous times. I'm sorry, like life is crazy. I will reiterate what we're doing for our fee. And then there was like no other talk about it, right? And so it's like, you should know, but like life gets crazy. So again, it's just asking more questions. And I needed to ask more questions too, right? For him in this deal. But it's having the relationship and the conversations to go, okay, cool. Hey, I want to borrow $100,000. Is the fee the same? No, it's not. Okay, cool. I need to change my underwriting because this is what I was underwriting for.
I was gonna ask, is that, don't you charge upfront?
So our team charges a deposit. We charge 70% deposit, which is higher than some teams. Some teams charge 70, sometimes 50, and then the rest is paid on the settlement statement. Now, once we have a well-established relationship, and let's just say you're going to bring me 10 deals a month, we're going to go for more of a volume type relationship. We're going to go, okay, cool, we can give you volume pricing, or we can have it paid on the settlement statement versus a deposit, right? Because we're going to know, or we're going to drop that deposit to, like, I'm a very firm believer in win-win. So if you're consistently bringing me 10 deals and I know that 9 out of 10 of them are going to close, again, closed, not just bring me the deals, right? Because if you bring me 10 and you cancel 10, I'm not going to give you a deal, right? But if you're
Yeah,
bringing
yeah,
me 10 deals and you're closing 9, I'm going to go, hey, you know what? We could probably put this on the settlement statement. We don't have to worry about this on the front because I know that your deals are good and they're going to close.
yeah, yeah,
Because at
yeah,
the end of the day, right, you're charging your fees because you have a business. I'm charging my fees because I have a business. And then I have team members under me. So I don't get that 70%. That 70% goes to the girls. And so then if something cancels, at least I know that their time was paid for. And who ends up losing the most when deals cancel? The business owner, right? And so that's just the thing of that deposit covers, some capital expenses and their fee. And so, I mean, but if I know that you're going to bring me deals that close, that's where we then have the conversation. And again, it's just the transparency in the relationship, right? Because it doesn't always make sense for people. So the person that I recently had this conversation with, we'd done numerous deals together and it was a rush transaction, which was fine. Everything happened just fine, but it was like a quick close. I know that life was happening for them too. And I was like, you know what? Don't worry about the deposit because I know, I know where you live, kind of situation where it's like, it's fine. Um, but then it was like, all of a sudden it was like more was getting added onto the transaction that wasn't up front. Right. So both sides were kind of like, a little frazzled. Right. And then I was like, okay, well, now title can't close in a rush, so we're going to take the rush fee off, but you added more things on, so we're going to just charge this little bit over here, and so it was just one of those things where in the emotions of buying a property, it was like, wait, what's your fee again, like what's happening? And it was like, okay, here we go, like no problem, because buying properties, whether you're an investor or a homestead, it's an emotional purchase, so a lot
makes sense. Yeah.
happens.
Yes. Uh, When you guys help with the underwriting portion, because I know you also have a full-time underwriter on the team.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to come to you with this contract saying, hey, I have 550 purchase price, 125 sell carry back, and I have this lender is going to do 75% LTV, what would they say for the underwriting part? What are the costs that we
Yeah.
need to look for?
Yeah. So Um, two caveats kind of here. So we always, when we're doing a Morby method, we require a Morby consult, a paid consult, so that we can go over the numbers together. And we have more of like, tell us the deal, what's happening, how's the relationship like, let's go through the numbers and make sure they're accurate. Now, if you're just coming to me for underwriting, um, there's going to be, it's a tiered fee of like, what do you need? Do you need a second set of eyes? Do you need us to actually underwrite it for you? You haven't even touched the underwriting. Do you need exit strategies? So we kind of have two different things here. For Morbies specifically, we have that paid required consult. And we dive into the numbers and we go through it. And this is where it comes into, okay, what's your transactional lender funds fees? If you don't have that information in that meeting, we can't properly help you underwrite it or check your numbers, right? And so one of the most recent ones that fell apart, it was they gave us a bunch of information, awesome, and we're asking these questions, and it's like, okay, well, I don't know, and then we're like, okay, go get that information, and then all of a sudden there's all these other fees, right? They had an acquisition fee, a wholesale fee, all of these other things that in this particular situation they were double dipping, but it was costing them so much money to double dip. So it was like, okay, I'm a firm believer if you can get an acquisition fee and it makes sense, awesome, do it, because you're paying yourself to buy that property, but you're also having the asset. And so, but they were double dipping in such a huge way that it was like, these numbers don't make sense. If your transactional lender is costing this much, and then you have this $30,000 fee, and you have this $10,000 fee, and like all of a sudden, and this is the one where it's like you thought your transactional lender had to bring 170 or $75,000, and they had to bring 120. Okay, well, why do you need all these fees? It makes sense if your transactional lender just has their fee, but then you're adding all of this other stuff on there, and you're just over leveraged, and it doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive into that in that paid Morby. Now, again, and I know I've said this in earlier in this series, if you don't disclose us information, we're not going to know. And so if you say this is the story, awesome, and then all of a sudden we're in the transaction and the story is different, you can't get mad at us because we didn't know it at the front because you didn't tell us, right? Because then that changes the numbers. And
Yeah.
then we couldn't
Makes sense.
properly prepare you for. And so it's like, you gotta be so transparent. And I know people are just like, okay, I can't hide this. And I don't want people to know how much I'm making on this deal. Why not? Why not? Get such a great deal that you're like, yeah, I'm paying myself all this money and it makes sense. And you're like, wow, I want to learn from you, right? I want to know how you're finding these deals. If you're making money on a deal, good for you. Like, you shouldn't hide it.
Mm.
You have value to bring if you can find deals like that. And then you can make that money, right?
Okay. I think that's all the questions I had. Do you want to add anything specific for just the numbers piece? I think we have covered a lot of ground.